Okay, welcome back. As you recall, we've gotten through setting up the joints for the spine and for the arm. And in this video, we're going to tackle the fingers. So one thing I didn't do in the last video, especially for the arm, is I didn't go in and rename the joints. So just so you know that between this last video and this one, I've gone through and corrected for that one. Clavicle, shoulder, elbow, and wrist. And so what I'm going to do now is one of the things that I don't particularly care for right now is I don't like how this wrist joint is oriented. So I'm just going to do that so I don't forget. So I want this wrist joint, excuse me, to sometimes I want this wrist joint to kind of flow through the center of the hand. And so what I think I need to do here is actually, excuse me, goodness, I got a frog in my throat. And I could try to create a joint out here and get it lined up, but that might be a little bit of a pain in the butt. So what I'm going to do is get my translate tool. I'm going to change my axis orientation to object. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just drag this out. And then I'm going to insert a new joint, skeleton, insert joint from the, oh, it doesn't usually like it, from the elbow down to the wrist. So this will be taking place. This will be my new wrist joint. And now, at least, again, this is kind of one of those benefits of those Terminator joints, is that it's very easy. It's much easier to discern the orientation of your joints this way. So again, I'm going to move this into place. The placement looks pretty good. So I'm just going to leave that as is, but the orientation I don't care for at all. You can see how the plane of the hand is sort of, as a matter of fact, let me go ahead and just create a plane so I can hopefully show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to create polygons, plane, create a little plane there. I'm going to snap that into place. And whoops, or not. There we go. Let me hide my geometry. That will help. Okay. And I'm going to just rotate this plane so that it kind of matches the rotation of my hand. And then that way you can kind of see how that's pretty close. You can see that this is pretty close to how the wrist is oriented, maybe a little bit more. Right? So you can kind of see now how this plane mimics how this hand is oriented. And then you can also seeing this, you can see how, let me scale this down a little bit so it's not so intrusive. So you can also see how misaligned this joint is. You see how the plane is this way. My joint is kind of off kilter that way. So I'm going to just start trying to get this lined up using this plane as a sort of a helper. Just going to get, I'm trying to get this, whoops. You see this, the y-axis here, I'm just trying to get it perpendicular to the plane. And this is so when I rotate on the z-axis, it will, I'm sorry, this way when I rotate let me freeze this really quick. Freeze all. This is so that when oh, that is the Y. Well, that's not what I wanted at all. There we go. I wanted this to be the Z axis. I forgot our schema here. That's what happens when you sleep between demos. So now you can see the Z axis is more perpendicular to the plane. And this is so, I'm gonna go ahead and freeze again. And now you'll see, like when I rotate it, you can see that towards the body is a positive, away from the body is negative. And that it will, when we rotate it, you can see how it will actually rotate the wrist the way that it's oriented. And I'm actually gonna just kind of bump this over a little bit so that it kind of goes right down the lines right through the middle of the last or the middle and the ring finger. And so now that that's kind of in place, I can delete this plane. And so I'll just do another freeze on these. And I can leave this terminator in here. I will need to delete it in the last part of the model, but I can just leave that there as a reference point. And then for this one, actually, I'll go ahead and go to skeleton orient joints and align orient to world so that it will also align. It'll mimic the orientation of its parent. So I'll click orient. And I'll select this and I'll turn on my local rotation axes. Then I just got a little renaming to do. So I'm going to do Control C, change this to wrist T, and then wrist. Now I got my names all set up. It's oriented, I think, much better for that hand. And now we can move on to the fingers. So let me think about how to best to do this. We'll just kind of go the way we've done it before, just to kind of keep our process consistent. So again, I'm going to go to skeleton, create joints, and there's this knuckle here, right at the where it meets the palm. Then you've got this middle knuckle, and then you've got this last knuckle out here. So there's 1, 2, 3 joints, and then a terminator. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click once, holding the shift key down, twice, 3 times, and then the terminator. Enter key. And here are my joints. Here are my outliner. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and rename them because obviously I'm bad at that if I don't do it straight away. So following my naming convention, joint underscore left underscore. I'm going to do the pointer finger first. Underscore, I think that's it. So I'll hit the enter key and I can just do this, double click here, add a 0, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to rename this last one T for terminator. Also, I'm going to select the hierarchy and then toggle my local rotation axes. And then the first thing, as we did with everything else, we make sure that it operates the way we want it to. And so I'm going to rotate this down. This would be towards the body, and you can see that's a negative rotation axis, which is not what we want. So I've got to flip that Z going in the opposite direction. And I will do that with our trusty Orient Joint tool. And X, our secondary axis, is Z. And I want this to point in the negative Z axis. You can use your world, use your compass down there for reference. And then I also want it to orient the children. So click apply. And you can see it didn't do this one, right? So I've got to orient to world, apply. So let's see, now we got this. If I rotate it down, you can see it's positive. So the other way will obviously be negative. And now we're ready to start moving this stuff into place. So when I move things into place, instead of object, I'll do world. This is just a little easier for me to track what I'm doing. So first thing I'm going to do is going to move this joint roughly from the front view where the knuckle is. Then from the side view, I can just move it forward until it's kind of right where it needs to be. And then I'll use the perspective view to kind of just noodle placement a little bit. That looks pretty good. But you can see it's oriented not with the plane of the hand. So now I'm just going to go ahead and rotate. Let me go back to the side view because I can use, dang it. I can use the side view to move this so that the Z axis here runs along the finger, kind of points down that finger. Oops. So I'm just rotating it here on the X to get this correct. And then I can rotate this down. And again, I can use my front view to make this joint here go down. You can see it's kind of in the center. And then I'm going to scale it to bring that second knuckle in. Then I'll use, again, my I'm gonna look at it here in the perspective. It's close, but not quite there. So I'm gonna move this over. And I'm trying to position this where you see right where this sort of wedge-shaped geometry is. That's where that knuckle is gonna bend. So let me actually focus on. So again, this is kind of these are sticklers. So I'm gonna actually just rotate this a little bit more until I'm happy with it. And again, the rotation though should be on object because that's what you want. Maybe a little bit more scale to bring that into place. There we go. It's kind of a weird concept to scale, using scale and rotation for positioning, and using those to actually influence the position and place the position for other objects. We're kind of used to doing it. If we want an object move, we move that thing. And so I'm going to go ahead now and focus on this next joint. So I'm going to rotate this. Again, I can just use this to do large placement. So just trying to get this lined here. And I'm going to look here, make sure that we're kind of squared away. And this looks a little, oops. So excuse me. And then I'm going to go ahead and scale in, bring it into this knuckle. Now, sometimes these joints in the fingers can get a little big. So I'm going to go ahead and select my hierarchy there. And then I'm going to go into the radius and just bring those down a little bit so it's easier to see. One seems to might be good. And you can get a little bit better idea of the placement of them. When they're too big, sometimes they're just, it's very difficult to figure out exactly where they are. And so you want to just kind of look at it. And actually, if you're looking at it from the back, you can see like these joints are a little, so like I want to try and move all of these slightly further towards the center of the finger. But I can't do this in world because you can see that it doesn't align to how I've got the joints. So I've got to pop back over, move to object, and now I can just move it straight over this way. All right, then I'm going to go back to world because that's what I'm going to need. And that looks pretty good. And we're going to leave this terminator joint way outside there. And so, excuse me, I'm going to select use my tool over here to select the chain. Then I'm going to freeze transforms. And I can go ahead and double check, make sure everything works well by selecting the hierarchy again, using the rotate tool and making sure everything bends in a positive value. And you can see how everything kind of curves the way it should. So I think we're good there. Next thing I also need to do is, escape, is I need to add these joints to my layer. So I'm going to right click and say add selected objects. Now they're going to be that lovely lime green. And so basically when you start the fingers, so if I wanted to do, well, I'll do the ring finger here really quick. Once you get one in place, the rest of them are a lot easier. It's the first one, it's a little bit harder. So I want to move this chain down the knuckles. So I've got to change my axis orientation from world to object. Then I can just hit Shift D to duplicate and then drag it down. And you're probably going to need to do a little bit of noodling just to kind of get this into place. And actually you can see on this Z axis, you can see how it's kind of off angle. So you just kind of have to get this back into shape so that it's perpendicular. We'll double check this one too. Oh, look at this. It's a little off. So I'm going to do this. And let's check that second one. That one it's okay. I'm just going to put this over here. Again, just trying to make this Z axis perpendicular to the plane of the fingers. There we go. That's better. Now I'll just check this last one for it's a little, there you go. So again, since I made those changes, I'm going to go straight ahead, freeze transforms. And now I can move on to this one. And that knuckle is good. So I'm going to select this knuckle. It's a little bit of an adjustment too, and it's a little not aligned to the finger. There we go. And then again, just kind of looking here, that Z axis looks pretty good. So at least I know all the joints right now are aligned to the plane. So now I can just kind of go in and get these knuckles in place. So this knuckle's a little high up, so I'm going to scale it in and then rotate down. So that's pretty good. And then I'm going to move to the next joint. So I'm going to try and get this guy placed by updating its parent. It also needs to be scaled out a little bit. And that's pretty good. That Terminator is fine, but it's just a little far out. So I'm just going to bring it in so we don't have like Freddy Krueger hands. And so there you go. And then what I'm going to do here is, this guy needs to be moved back a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to just move him back. So he's kind of in the, and then I got to update these again. It's kind of, it's why it's really good to spend the time, make sure that you're, fully happy with one, so you don't have to go back and do a lot of, as I refer to it, noodling. And so now that I've got this, you can see all these transforms. I'm just going to select the hierarchy, freeze, and now everything should be good to go. I do need to rename. So I'm going to select my new pointers here and then just joint left. I'm going to just call this middle underscore, hit the enter key, and you can see it's renamed. I'm just going to make this 0. So I've got a number for each one of these, and now I've done my pointer and my ring finger. So now let's do the thumb though, because the thumb is the fun finger. And so much like what I did with the middle finger, I'm going to just hit duplicate. But the thumb is a weird one because we've got this palm area. We've got palm would be like joint 0. This would be joint 1, joint 2. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, this would be 1, 2, and 3. But the orientation is weird. So if I move this into place, I'm going to move this back. So this is kind of roughly where I want that first thumb position to be. It's right about there. But the orientation is kind of weird because this joint here, it kind of brings things in, kind of brings the thumb in towards the palm, right? And so if I rotate, on the Z-axis, you can see it works like the other thumbs, but it's not the way it should be. The Z-axis actually needs to be this direction. So the Z should be kind of pointing downwards. And I'm just going to freeze my transform. So, you know, it helps to get a really good idea. If you've got a lot of transforms and you start rotating, you're going to see the rotation values. It's going to hit multiple channels. And so if I rotate towards, it's negative. So you see, like, it needs to be the other way around on top of all this. So I'm going to just rotate this all the way over. Now I can actually just do negative 180. And then I can freeze. And oops, this is towards the thumb or towards the body, which is great. So now it's oriented correctly. I just need to get the rest of them, excuse me, into place. So I'm going to move this over. And again, we kind of have the same plane issues. So I'm going to try and get this Z axis lined to the plane of the geometry here. That's probably looks pretty good. Again, I'm just going to freeze transform so I can. I apologize for me clearing my throat. It's just morning crud, I guess. All right, just get this in. I think actually position-wise, that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll drag it in just a hair. Rotate it up. Then I'm just going to hit the next one. And if I rotate here, you can see the Z-axis towards the body is positive, which means it's in good shape. And I'm going to just try and get this other joint into place. Looks pretty good. Maybe scale that just a touch. And then I'm going to bring the Terminator in a bit, again, just for keep us from having claws. And then I'll let's go ahead and actually get this so that it's coming out of the end of the fingers. Okay. There, I'm going to select the hierarchy, freeze transforms. And I think we're good. I can select my hierarchy and rotate on the Z, and it should curl towards the body on a positive with positive values. So we're good to go. Now, of course, we got to rename because it ain't the pointer. So joint left, underscore, enter, and then I can just call this 0. Cool. Now, once you've actually done all the fingers, I'm going to skip a bit, but once you've gotten all the fingers in place, I no longer need this terminator joint for the wrist. So I'm going to hit delete. And the wrist no longer utilizes, let me phrase this differently. The wrist doesn't use that to determine its position, so it's not going to change. It's kind of the crappy way I'm getting around to explaining this. But now we want to actually start hooking up all of our joints together. So I don't think I need to do the leg, but I'll let you guys let me know if you think you need some help with that. But again, it's, excuse me, good Lord. But again, the nice thing about the leg is that you do actually have a plane here, this plane that runs along the front of the leg that you can use for orientation to help you orient. Or you can actually use that plane, create that plane like I did earlier for the wrist. But so for the fingers, I'm going to select the first joint. I'm going to hold the shift key down. I'm going to click the first joints of each of the fingers. Then with the shift key still held, I'm going to click the wrist, and then I'm just going to hit P. And now you can see they're all connected together. Lovely. And then I can do the same thing for the collarbone and the spine. So, excuse me, always, no, I'm not going to say always, but in this instance, we're going to actually link to the spine that's just below the collarbone in the chain. And I'm going to hit P. So now they're all connected. And when you're ready to create, to go to the other side, you can just select the sort of the root joint of your arm chain, and then the same thing for your legs. And you can say, just go up to skeleton mirror joints, hit the options box, search for left, replace, so it's underscore L underscore, replace with right, which is underscore R underscore. We're going to do this on the YZ plane, which if you look here, you can see the Y axis and the Z axis, the plane that creates, that's the mirroring, that's what we're going to mirror over. And then behavior is what we want, and click apply, close it. And now you've got your joints mirrored over. And the next thing what you should always do when you're mirroring is just go through and make sure your joints are actually where they need to be. Sometimes models are not, they look like they're perfectly mirrored, but sometimes they aren't. And so you want to make sure that your joints are where they need to be. Otherwise, you just kind of need to go through and nudge them into place. And the cool thing too is that if I go into the root, select the hierarchy here, hit F, left and rights are all named. And again, you can test this, right? By like I select my two shoulder joints, I rotate on the negative Z and they both go up, positive Z's, they both go down. Same thing with the elbows. Just do quick, they call these spot checking. Positive is towards, away is negative, good there. And then you can just do the wrist too. So negative is away, positive is towards, and you're good to go. So hopefully this helps you get through the fingers. It's not that bad once you get used to it. Excuse me. It's not too bad once you get used to it. And at least you only have to do it on one side, then mirror it over. And that should help you get through your your fingers. Anyway, hopefully this is helpful. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me at the Discord. Thank you all very much, and good luck with your homework.